I think you've all been reading about what's happened in the U.S. in terms of PASPA being overruled. I'm going to get into that. There's a lot of opportunity in the U.S. It's not going to be immediate. I think this talk is going to be more about what expectations should be than exactly what it will be, over time. So just a little bit about myself. I know Dave had given you a couple things about myself. So I've been in this space for a long time. So I started off on the core video game side with Viacom. Simon Schuster, moved over to Hasbro Interactive and Atari, did pretty much the first downloadable content with all the box products with Hasbro and Atari back in the early 2000s. Play First, as Dave mentioned, was one of the early casual game startups. With Slingo, one of the first social casino products, if not the first, back from the early mid-90s, which I then sold to Real Networks. And then for the past 7-8 years, I've been with more of the real money wagering products. So building a platform in New Jersey for Golden Nugget and Resorts, doing horse race wagering online, as well as Draft Day, which is a daily fantasy product. So I've really had a good scope of all the different verticals in games and gaming until we get into sports betting. And so what I've got is a quick video here of what I'm doing at Face Off.
Sports are even better when there's something more at stake. Introducing Face Off, where you can use your sports knowledge to win chips, prizes, and cash. It's easy. Pick your team, create a challenge, and then send it out to one of your friends or the world. Once it's been accepted, sit back, enjoy the game, and wait for the glory to come to you. Submit your points to the leaderboard and play one of our skill-based games to turn your winnings into cash prizes to share with friends. Sports are more fun when you face off.
So it gives you an idea of what we're doing. We've taken a mashup. All right.
The family of paints and coatings that safeguard a
How do I get it?
737 also protect 737 Main Street.
Sorry?
They keep a highway graffiti-free
Moved right into the next
and a hallway crayon-free. Brighten a fire engine.
So anyway, what we did is a mashup of
PPG, where the paints
sports
and coatings
betting,
we perfect
social
for industry.
games, and skill-based games. So basically what Face Off is, you're basically challenging your friends using Face Off chips peer-to-peer on the outcome of the game. We've got sports radar feeding in the lines, and then what you're doing is once you've won someone else's chips, you've got two choices. You can either take those chips and keep them in the social game, or you can put them to a leaderboard, and from that point on, the chips turn into points, and that position on the leaderboard has a value to it where you play a skill game to cash out. So basically it's trying to have the same incentive of sports betting, but in a legal way where your money is based upon the outcome of your skill game, not the outcome of the sporting event. So, as we're seeing what's happening in the U.S. with sports betting, getting involved in sports betting sooner than later is going to be important, because if we take a look at this next slide, there's $150 to $400 billion turnover in sports betting in the U.S., illegal turnover. Now, Nevada is $5 billion in legal sports betting. If you take a look at some of the other numbers, all the U.S. lotteries combined is $75 billion in turnover. Daily fantasy is $4 billion. Season-long fantasy is about $15 billion, and that's mostly illegal wagering. And horse racing is $10 billion in legal wagering. So this is a huge number, whether you use the 150 or the 400 billion. So there's a lot of money out there, and that's why the states are so excited about sports betting. But there are a couple things that have happened with PASPA that people kind of knew. The understanding with PASPA is the Professional Amateur Sports Protection Act. There were 4 states that were allowed to have sports betting in 1992 because they were already doing some level of sports betting. Those are the 4 states. New Jersey was the 5th state, but they didn't pass their state law in time to be able to be grandfathered in. So the whole case around PASPA with New Jersey was, New Jersey wanted the rights back to offer sports betting in New Jersey. And it became a much bigger case where the Supreme Court came in as a referendum on states' rights, not New Jersey's own right to have sports betting based upon the PASPA law. So based upon what happened with the Supreme Court ruling a few weeks ago, it was reversed. The states now have the right to make their own decision. So now what they have to do is pass sports betting laws. They have to pass regulations. And then they have to decide whether they want it just in retail operations or to go online, which is really the key to New Jersey. They're passing their regulations over the next couple weeks. And one of the key aspects to this is that sports betting was all about bringing tourism to Atlantic City. But the money is online. If you look at the $400 billion as the top line, the majority of that's coming from offshore sports books. So if you're going to grab the largest tax dollar, you've got to be online. But if you want to drive tourism to Atlantic City, having online may be a disincentive to drive people to Atlantic City. So each of these states has some significant decisions to make based upon, are they going to help out the racetrack and the casino industry, or are they looking to maximize their tax revenues by opening it up to online? Because now it gets very interesting when you take a look at what are the issues that are outstanding in sports betting. So right now you've got the 4 states that show up there that have already passed some level of online laws as well as sports betting laws. But nobody is live online at this point, except if you talk about Delaware, part of the lottery. Now what you have to add to this are the taxes, the league fees, the licensing costs that will create more challenges. And what I mean by that is, in New Jersey, the tax rate's going to be somewhere between 12 and 17%. In Pennsylvania, it's 36%, which is huge. The licensing fees, to get a license to be able to be in the state, I've been licensed in the state of New Jersey for iGaming. It cost a lot of money for me to get licensed. It cost the company a couple $1 million to get licensed. And then there is a fee to actually participate in the state, which in New Jersey was a skin from one of the casino operators, which is about $5 million. Now, if you go to Pennsylvania, it's a $10 million to buy a license. It's going to be a couple $1 million to be licensed, because remember, it's all different state laws right now. So if there's 20 states that have sports betting laws, you've got to get licensed in each of those states, right? Every state is its own jurisdiction based upon the law. So in Pennsylvania, you're looking at $10 million to get a sports betting license. Then you're talking about a couple $1 million to get licensed. And then right now in New Jersey, iGaming, the cost of acquiring one funded iGaming customer is $800. About 4 years ago, it was $150 for one funded account. So the cost of acquisition is getting significantly high. Now add to this, you've got the league fees. So you've probably heard the integrity tax being talked about by the leagues. That is something that's just basically a handout to the leagues to get more money in. I doubt the integrity tax will work, but what they will probably get is a higher cost for their stats. So each of the states will have to provide a basis for each of the operators as to the stats they have to get, and that they have to be the regulated stats coming from each of the leagues. So when you think about the overall cost, sports betting operations in Nevada work on 4 to 5 points. Of those 4 to 5 points, the league is going to try to grab 1 point. The state taxes are going to grab another point. So now you're looking at making 2 to 3% profit on the wagers coming in. Not a lot of money there when everything is said and done. So what we're seeing right now is over the next month or so, there's going to be 20 states trying to push through sports betting legislation so they can at least be up and running for the football season, either in the casinos and the racetracks. Online is going to be a little more difficult. I don't see any other states passing any sort of online gambling laws during this session, probably another year or so before there's anything online, could be even 2 to 3 years. Casinos, horse tracks, state lotteries, they're probably going to be the most benefit the most out of all this. They're the first ones that will be able to deliver revenues to the state in forms of taxes. And plus, they've already been licensed for gambling, so it'll be a lot easier just to get them through the system. The group that's going to be probably most hurt is going to be daily fantasy. Maybe 30% of their players are sports bettors, but it's all based upon liquidity. So any liquidity coming out of daily fantasy is something that they're just never going to replace, which is why you saw Paddy Power buy FanDuel, and why you hear DraftKings saying they're going to be running into sports betting as fast as they can. But based upon all the hurdles I just went through, it's going to be a number of years before any of the daily fantasy groups are going to be able to see online sports betting that they're able to do. Plus, on top of that, they've been taking gray market, gray area type of wagers, so they could be considered bad actors in many of the states, so it could be a while before they can get up and running. So what are the opportunities in the U.S.? You see, being a B2C operator for sports betting is going to be a challenge. You've got some big companies out there like William Hill, SB Tech, Paddy Power, all going to be trying to dominate what they've been doing here in Europe for a number of years. But like Face-Off, the social piece of the business, no different than social casino games. What we've done is taken a product that allows people to enjoy sports peer-to-peer, not have to bet against a book, make it more social. They can, drive more friends to the product and create new friends, and then bring that skill-based model into it. So anybody who's a gamer will understand that, hey, I just won these chips. Now I can cash them in through a skill game. But you're going to find that most of the millennials out there who are driving towards this product are gamers themselves, and will play a skill game to win money. Other content out there is Daily Number. It's more of a daily fantasy alternative where you're just picking 9 players, and based upon their skill, the players' level of success in their sport, you'll be able to put $5 down in the fee, and the money's back can be anywhere from 2 to 1 to 100 to 1 based upon how skilled those players are. WinView is another free type of app that you are basically social. You're basically in-game wagering with free-to-play chips, and then the top 3 will win some sort of prize at the end. And then what you have is this Hype Sports, which is HQ for sports. So there's plenty of ways for developers and publishers to start getting involved in sports betting without having to be in sports betting in the actual real money regulatory aspect of it. Because what you're going to be finding in sports betting is that it's going to be the acquisition of players that is going to be the biggest value. So those who are in the pickaxe and shovel business, how they can supply players, how they can supply technology to the sports betting companies, is going to be very successful for them. Content providers, a group out there called Chalkline. What they do is they've aggregated all the different companies that deliver data around the sports and information around the games that are happening. So you as a consumer can aggregate all that data and then sift through it in a way that will allow you to become a better bettor, for no better words. Wager Alarm is another first-person product where they're writing articles about each of the games every day. So you can go in and check to see which is the best sport to go bet on and what are the best teams to bet on that day. And then RotoQL and BetQL are products, basically best bets. People out there offering best bets. So there's a lot of ways for developers to bring in new content into the space. These are just a few. And then you've got the affiliates. Affiliates are probably going to be the most valuable business in the long term. As I mentioned, 4 years ago when I launched the iGaming platform in New Jersey, a funded account was $150. Now it's $800 to acquire that one player. So though the price for consumers and customers is going to be the #1 thing in terms of value to any of the casinos, racetracks, and even online sports bettors. And I think the last slide I have here is just an idea of what you can do in mobile. This other group called Chalkline allows you to aggregate all the different types of data coming in. So, from an overall perspective, it's exciting that the U.S. and sports betting is moving forward. The challenge is going to be 50 states are going to have to make 50 different laws. There are a couple bills that are going to be put into Congress to basically serve as a, no different than the Horse Racing Act, where all the states can opt in if they want, but there's a baseline of laws and a baseline of regulations that the states have to opt into, which would be the best for operators, because it's going to be very difficult to go out there and get licensed by 50 different states when you know the cost in each state is going to be significant. And one of the things that the courts could do is just say that Nevada and New Jersey, who have been licensing people and companies for dozens of years, would be the two licensing authorities for the country. Therefore, if you already spent the millions of dollars to be licensed in one, you'll be licensed across the country. But again, that would be a federal law, and we know how fast Congress works when it comes to things of this nature. So, we'll see where all of this ends up going, but really it's an exciting time. And really those who are creative, particularly in the casual game industry and our audience here, you've seen how we've grown. We've been the casual, 15 years now? We've had this conference. And we've gone from downloadable content to mobile content, and now we're talking real money sports over the last couple of years. So, this is where the business is going. $400 billion is nothing to shake a stick at. It's a lot of opportunity for a lot of people, just finding that right niche into the marketplace.
You mentioned the cost of the sports data. Has there been any challenge, or can you just talk me through the cost of sports data, like the fact that the 49ers beat the Packers 26-25? Isn't that just public information, or do the NFL try and sort of say no, you can't even use that information without a kickback?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. I think it was the 8th District Court or the 8th Circuit Court that actually had said that it's public domain data. And I think that's the after the fact data. But that was a circuit court. I wouldn't be surprised if it's taken to the Supreme Court based upon what the leagues want to do in driving more revenues. Because, in-game sports betting in the UK is probably 60–70% of the overall sports betting, which really hasn't been a factor in the US at all. So that's going to become a significant factor. So I think that's where you're going to see the rise in costs in terms of delivering that on-time data, so that you can deliver the in-game sports product. And I think that's where the leagues will probably say, after the fact, okay, maybe that is public domain, but during the game, that would be our data, and that's where I would see some level of conflict happening.
In your experience, where do you see that ending up? Because with the free speech in America, obviously a big thing, isn't the fact that somebody is 3-0 up after 10 minutes, isn't that just a fact?
Yeah, I agree with you in terms of sports data is public domain. It's happening as you watch it. But I think from a technology perspective, if you're operating and you're taking a wager on what's that next play going to be, at 5 minutes into the game, you want to make sure it's exactly right. So you're going to have the data that is spot on. And the challenge would be if you're using a third-party data source that doesn't have the technology built in that the leagues want. They can say, hey, this is approved by us. There could be some other types of concerns down the road if you miss it by even a couple seconds, that the play is different.
But right now, the after the fact results, the end of the game, this was the score. Is that absolutely clear that that is public domain and you don't need to be licensed?
At this point, I think what we know is there's multiple sources that are delivering that data. So you can go to Sports Radar, you can go to Stats, you can go to Don Best. There's several companies you can go to and you can purchase that data. So for example, with Face Off or with even the daily fantasy companies, that data is already being delivered through different sources, and it's usually done by best price or best partnership or best technology, whatever is going to, but it's up to the operator to decide what group they're going to use. Okay. The question will be, will the leagues be able to force that? So if you have to be licensed in the state to run a gambling operation, then the state could say, well, you have to use these data sources, right? And each league has a different source, which is their authorized data.
Yeah. Okay.
And so it'll be interesting. There's a lot of little things in this that are going to have to be resolved before it's ever going to be able to be that 400 billion in the U.S., you know, from a legal perspective.
Hi there. Thanks for that. That's very interesting. Given we've got a whole bunch of extremely cash-rich sports betting organisations in Europe, predominantly the UK, and we've already seen the Paddy Powers bid for FanDuel, do you think you're going to see a land grab from those kind of organisations in both fantasy league and sports betting and social betting?
Yeah.
To get a foothold in the States?
I mean, you're already seeing it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I think, you know, you got SB Tech, which was an unknown in the U.S., now doing a deal with Churchill Downs and signing up other casino operators. You have William Hill, who has been very successful, you know, in Nevada, signing up Monmouth Track and other operators in New Jersey. Paddy Power, because they're Ladbrokes, so they have the stadium product, so they, I think, have the most operators in Nevada, so they'll be expanding. You know, and there's dozens of others. You know, here in the UK, you've got CrownBet in Australia. You know, there's a lot of people looking to make their mark in the US. And, you know, it's the Wild West right now. You know, I wouldn't be able to call who's going to be able to do what. On the daily fantasy side, it's great, I think, for the operators to maybe put a little bit more into those companies. But I think the database is really what they're looking for more. I think daily fantasy really hit their peak a couple years ago when you know, all the decisions around whether it was legal or not hit, and a lot of players moved away and went back to their sports betting online and on the offshore side. So you know, where this is going, it's the money's there, the technology's there. It's really about the states passing the laws, passing the regulations, deciding if it's going to be offline and or online, and then letting the market, you know, move forward. You know, hopefully the leagues will be a partner in it and not try to be an obstacle that they've been for the past 25 years, because it's hard to say that the PASPA law in terms of protecting the sports bettor and the leagues actually succeeded when there's $400 billion in turnover. So it's kind of contradictory to what they're trying to do.
Quick follow-up, if I may. In terms of that legislation at state level, do you think that's going to require a physical presence for companies in that state?
Some will and some won't. You know, New Jersey, the only way to get a license for iGaming was to have a physical casino, and then each of the casinos had 5 skins they could license to somebody else. Right? That's how Betfair and Paddy Power got into New Jersey. In Pennsylvania, they will sell you a license if you are not a physical casino for online, but as I said, the cost is $10 million and 36% tax. So it's really put in there to protect the operators in Pennsylvania, not have others from outside of the state come in and start taking that business away. So each of the states going to look at the success in New Jersey, they're going to look at what's happening in Pennsylvania, and they're going to make their own decisions, and they're probably going to be hybrids of those 2 states and others that are going to emerge. But ultimately, for an operator to try to deal with all these different laws, daily fantasy is a good showing of the challenges that happened over that period of time. Is that some states it's 18, some states it's 21, some states you had to show that they played in over 100 matches, and some states it didn't matter. All these different laws, and then, you know, one thing I did not mention was, you know, the funding. How are you going to fund your account? In New Jersey right now, you've got about 40+% of all credit cards not accepted because of the Wire Act is, you know, transporting money over state lines where it's illegal in one state and not in the other. Banks can't do that. So if you're a multi-state bank, you're not going to accept iGaming money in New Jersey, because if it ends up in New York, then you've got some, you know, some things that you got to talk to the government about. So it's not very easy to fund an account in New Jersey, you know, just by taking out your credit card, which is 95+% of all transactions in the US. So there's just other hurdles when it comes to these that need to be resolved for it to reach the maximum potential that everybody expects it to have. So it will get there. I think what I've been trying to show here is the expectations should be somewhat muted a little bit, until the laws are in place. And I think by the end of June, we'll be able to take a better look at, all right, what states are in, what are the laws that are placed, who's going to be online, who's not going to be online, and then you can start defining as a developer, as a publisher, what's that content? What is that model that's going to be more successful for, my business comparative to what's going to be successful for those, online groups and sports books.
Yeah. I mean, the Supreme Court ruling was obviously very exciting for, opening up sports betting supposedly as it comes out. But where's the line between, at the same time, social sports and social casinos are kind of, there's a bit of a downturn now where you're hearing, well, maybe those credits are going to be treated like real money gaming.
Yeah.
And where's kind of that line within the U.S. market of when does a prize of credits, when does it stop becoming?
So now you're getting into the state law stuff that makes it challenging. So you're talking about the Washington state law that we all got notice of pretty quickly, particularly from our credit card companies. That's really the one state that had that, and the ruling that came down based upon how their law was written, that was the ruling. Same thing happened in New York with daily fantasy, and then the state senate went in and changed the law, and daily fantasy was then allowed within the next year. So how PASPA and the laws coming out will influence the social game side. It's a good question, because I haven't seen any bill yet that includes social games or social sports within the state's sports betting bills, so they'll be treated separately. The way Face-Off is positioned, it's really on the skill-based laws that already exist in the state. So companies like Skills, companies like Game Show Network, and even in the past King, have all participated in skill games for the last 20 plus years. So it's really just using the existing laws on the books, because people are really winning money based upon their skill, right? Not on their, not on a sense of chance in that level. So the Washington law was interesting, but from what I have seen from all the legal opinions that I've gotten on the other states, I don't see that replicating itself, and I'm sure they'll resolve that in their own state, since I think they've got a few of the social game companies in their own state that they may want to work with.